Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic week. Well, I love cruising. Nothing's going to stop me from going cruising, but sometimes bad things happen out there and there have been some interesting things that have happened that just make some people say, I just don't want to cruise because of this. So let's look at what happened over the past year at some of the bad things that happened, kind of like the dark side of cruising. So I've looked back over the past 12 months and I got a list of some things together, and these are in no particular order. It's really hard to say what incident is worse than another incident because quite frankly, we don't want any of these to happen. So my first example was the Voyager of the Seas leaving Australia, where 1,300 of a 2,600 passenger crew all came from one company. It was a cigarette company from India, and 1,300 men came on board. It was a group cruise for them. The company was rewarding their employees, but it kind of turned into one huge long bachelor party where they brought on their own food. They had girls up in skimpy costumes and loud music's going on. They basically took over the top decks. And if you were there with your family and just looking for a regular, normal cruise, this just probably wasn't for you. In fact, it was so bad that Royal Caribbean refunded every other passenger all their money back. Number two was the Carnival Dream and the flood that happened to about 50 cabins on board when a pipe burst and it just all down the hallways, and that was not a fun cruise for a lot of people out there. A lot of people thought the ship was sinking. There was so much water, but in reality, it was just a main pipe that bursted. Yeah, they actually did a pretty good job cleaning it all up and drying it out as fast as they could. But you definitely don't want something that major happening on your cruise. Number three would be when the gentleman who was on the Mariner of the Seas and he was doing that new Skypad, and it's like the bungee cords that are jumping up and down, and it's it's only on two ships, it's about to be on a third, and one of the cables broke. He fell to the ground about 25 feet and broke his pelvis. And now he's having trouble walking. There's lawsuits out there. When you go on a cruise ship, you kind of expect their entertainment around the ship to be completely safe, and most 99.999 times it absolutely is. But this is a fairly recent new attraction on the cruise ships. Like I said, there was only two in all of the oceans, and yeah, unfortunately this gentleman found out the hard way there might be problems with that one. Number four, the Navigator of the Sea. She's out there sailing, everything's going, and all of a sudden, bam, there's a big hole in the side of the ship because the stabilizers on the side of the ship that balance out the ship so it's not rocking as much and makes for a much smoother, much more enjoyable cruise. One of them actually just broke off and started flooding the room that was there. They sealed off that room. It's a watertight area, and continued on, and they ended up actually heading into Vigo, Spain, and ended up having to get it repaired. But people said they're just sitting up on deck and they heard a bang, and the next thing you know, the crew were running and things were happening. You don't expect a literal part of a ship to fall off the ship. What? Number five is, let's just leap these all together, is all the unfortunate incidences that happen sometimes. But I'm not talking about people who jump or, people who get sick. I'm talking about actual intended injuries on people. There have been some numerous things where people were spotted pushing people overboard and causing mayhem on the cruise ships as well. Let's put all those, because you don't think on a party vessel and everyone's supposed to be having a good time, you just don't think of like something that serious of a crime happening on a cruise ship, but they do. Number six is those accidental misfortunes on the ship that cause people to pass away. Um, this year we had, in the past 12 months, the young lad who was climbing from one balcony to the other and slipped and lost his grip and fell to the deck below. We had the incident of the newlywed couple who were out enjoying a shore excursion, and the gentleman came down on the zip line, stopped halfway, got stuck, and they sent his wife directly after him, and she ran in to him. He died. She was injured. She's having a hard time recovering, and they were on their honeymoon. So lots of situations like that happen, just completely unfortunate events. And so I always say, when you're out there, just try and make sure you're completely aware of all your surroundings. Know how a zip line is supposed to operate it. If it doesn't look safe, don't do it. And don't be afraid to just turn around, because I've been on many zip lines now out there, and you can tell when one is being run properly, and you can tell when one is just somebody's not paying attention. And if that's the case, you need to pay attention. How about the brawl on the ocean? That's right. Another family, about 23 family members, got on board and just started picking fights. It seemed like they were looking to fight the minute they got on board. They were fighting with security guards. They were fighting fellow guests. It got to the point where fellow guests just locked themselves in the room if they were anywhere near those people and just stayed there. They were escorted and arrested getting off the ship, and I think there were charges laid as well. They are now banned from that cruise line, and quite frankly, they should be banned from every cruise line everywhere. Another fun cruise was, think about going on a nice long Panama Canal cruise, 15 days, sit out on the front deck, and you're sitting there in the sun, and it's beautiful. Yeah, well, the people who jumped on the Norwegian Sun didn't quite have that experience, because on their way to a dry dock, because they knew they wouldn't get enough done at the dry dock, Norwegian decided to have construction going on, if you will, on the ship, where they were varnishing decks and stripping decks, and piles of chemicals were up on board, many of them saying corrosive and dangerous, and they blocked off huge sections of the ship and on the top decks, and basically ruined everybody's cruise. And at first they just offered, like, here's a 25% future cruise credit. And yeah, what? Look, I don't expect you to be building the ship while I'm on the ship. So when it struck the media and all the YouTubers and all the blogs and all the Facebook posts just headed out there and just were ripping them, they finally decided to offer a 100% future cruise credit. And quite frankly, they should have been probably the 100% future cruise credit and maybe 100% of their cruise money back, because that was just ridiculous to have tried that. One of the more scary incidents has happened, and it was just in a blink of an eye. It only lasted for about 60 seconds. That was on the Carnival Sunshine, when she was sailing along, and all of a sudden one of the stabilizers, there was a program short, and it actually listed the ship over to one side for about 60 seconds. People were terrified. Things were flown all over the place. All the dining room setup was all over the floor. The bars were all smashed. The bottles were gone. It was a mess, and it probably was absolutely terrifying. When the story first broke, they just were saying it just listed a little bit to the side, but after we heard more, it had listed like that, to the point where if you were in those lower balconies, you could probably reach out and touch the water. You don't want that to happen anywhere, and I completely feel for those people. Lastly, this happened just recently out on the coast of Norway, the Viking Sky, where she stalled out. They lost 3 of her 4 engines right on the coast of Norway, so close to the rocks that they had to send out a mayday. They dropped anchor. They kept their one engine trying to go while the crew was repairing and trying to get the engines going again in rough weather. Helicopters were called in. 5 helicopters were called in. 3 different ships were sent to help them. One of the ships coming to rescue them actually ended up getting into trouble herself when her engine stalled out and they had to jump. The crew actually had to jump in the water to get rescued because there was so much debris on there because they were a cargo ship. They ended up taking about half the passengers off when they finally got 2 more engines running and she was able to make herself into port. Viking has figured out what the problem was, and what it was a sensor. And the sensor was saying that there's no oil. Even though there was lots of oil in the tank, the levels of the oil, because of the rough seas, the sensor signaled there's not enough oil getting to the engines and it shut the engines down. And this put everybody in a lot of danger. So there you go. Did this scare you from cruising? Because it doesn't scare me. I just named 10 incidences, but that's over the course of a year. I bet you hear a lot more in your local city every single week. And so, no, it's not going to turn me off of cruising. I'm still going to cruise, and I hope you will too. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Till next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.